Welcome to Kevin Deal Photography, where I take you on my journey through photography. On today's episode, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the 18mm 1.8 from Lumix. Welcome to today's episode. If you're not familiar with Kevin Deal Photography, we do gear reviews, tips, techniques, and tutorials, and sometimes we dive into film. If any of that sounds appealing to you, click the subscribe button below. For all of you who are back to Kevin Deal Photography, welcome back. And for all of you where this is your first time here, at the beginning of every episode, I ask for donations to BIG, which is an organization that helps intellectually disabled adults adapt to jobs in the real world. But to the subject of today's episode. With Panasonic Lumix positioning its cameras as true hybrid tools, video is a major part of how many Lumix users earn a living. Most videographers need a reliable ultra-wide lens, something that can handle everything from capturing expansive environments to camera-facing talking head content like vlogging. I'm definitely in that category with this YouTube channel. I'm looking for a single lens that excels for field work and delivers exceptional image quality when I'm talking to the camera. On the photography side, I enjoy shooting landscapes, architecture, street, and creative portraiture. So 18mm is an especially intriguing focal length to me. After locking in my go-to trio of the focal lengths 35, 50, and 85mm for my S9 and S1R2, I quickly turned my attention to the 18mm. I purchased this lens with my own money, and now it's time to see what it's really made of with some real-world testing. Is this lens going to make itself at home in my kit? That's precisely what we intend to find out in today's episode. But first, let's talk about the specs. The Lumix 18mm f1.8 is an ultra-wide full-frame lens for the Panasonic Lumix L mount system. Its aperture range is f1.8 to f16. It has an angle of view of 100 degrees. Its minimum focusing distance is 7.1 inches or 18 centimeters. Its magnification is 0.2. Its optical design is 13 elements in 12 groups, and it has 9 rounded aperture blades. This lens is not image stabilized. It features built-in weather resistance. Its front filter thread size is 67mm. Its dimensions are 2.9 by 3.2 inches or 73.6 by 82mm. It comes in at a weight of 12 ounces or 340 grams, and it comes in at a street price of $1,099 US. Alright, with the specs out of the way, it's time to test this 18mm in some real-world scenarios. And by real-world, I mean taking it everywhere. New York City, the Dominican Republic, Orlando, Houston, and of course, my hometown of Austin. This is going to be my primary lens for video work on my S9 for this channel, which should give me a good feel for how it performs both handheld and on a gimbal. As a photographer, I'll also have plenty of chances to use this 18mm for street photography, travel, and even professional shoots when I'm looking for a creative spark or a change-up lens. So let's kick things off with our first test, the vlog test.
All right, so this is what it looks like with the image stabilization turned on. I'm purposely trying to do really fast lateral movements because that's usually what warps when you have the image stabilization on. So once again, this is handheld. None of these shots have been with a gimbal, and this is what you can expect with this lens with image stabilization on.
Now here is the 18mm wide open at 1.8. It's pretty sharp, pretty good isolation. Now let's look at it compared to the 20 to 60 kit lens. They're both wide open, and you can definitely see a little more bokeh on the 18mm.
So this is actually what you can expect with 30 frames per second, full frame, 18mm on my S1R2. You can definitely see quite a bit of the Caribbean behind me. So a lot going on there. There's this really cool double swing thing right here. I can put myself on a third.
and I can put it on a third, just like that. So definitely doable as far as getting more environment than you would with, say, a 35, and definitely way more than a 50, 28, 24. So this is what 18 looks like. Definitely something to keep in mind if you're considering this for vlogging.
So I did a fantastic job at my all-inclusive resort in the Dominican Republic and at Infocom in Orlando. I took it back to Austin and did a little backlit performance test. I'm looking for flaring, ghosting, loss of contrast. Personally, I don't really care about that kind of stuff, but I know a lot of you do. So as you can see right here, this is how it performs in backlit situations. On to New York City and some more street photography. I used it for some B-roll and then I decided to just shoot some street with it. I normally shoot 35, but I actually found 18 to be a little bit more favorable with those really tall buildings in Manhattan that get on top of you pretty fast. Then I decided to play a fun game that I always play, which is I try to find another street photographer and then I take pictures of them without them actually knowing that I'm taking their picture, and I feel this guy made a pretty fascinating subject in the foreground of these shots. After fulfilling its vlogging duties, I took my 18mm underground into Penn Station and I utilized that 1.8 maximum aperture where it proved itself worthy for low lighting situations when shooting the New York subway.
All right, so I'm not holding the 18mm because I'm actually recording myself on it, but ultra wide, you can do some really creative portraiture with it. So let's see what kind of ultra creative shots we can get with an ultra wide 18mm 1.8 lens.
Okay, I think you've seen enough examples of both video and photography shot with this 18mm 1.8, so let's go back to my studio and talk about what I liked and didn't like. All right, so I've had this 18mm for the better part of a year. I use it a ton on this channel, so I have a pretty good idea of how I feel about it. Let's first start with the areas where I feel like it could have gotten things a little bit better. I usually have at least 3 cons for every product I review on this channel. When I started this episode, I actually had 3 written down. One of them is that this lens doesn't have a dedicated aperture ring. But that changed recently when Lumix released a new firmware that lets you reassign the focus ring to control whatever you want, including aperture. So now the only real scenario where that might be a con is if you want to control both the focus and aperture from the lens simultaneously. Since there's only one ring, you can only do one at a time. For most of you, that's probably not a deal breaker. Most Lumix shooters already have a body dial dedicated to aperture control anyway. So, while I'll mention it for the sake of transparency, it's honestly a stretch to call that a con. Still, I always try to uncover potential drawbacks for you, even when they're not necessarily drawbacks for me. Another thing that might count as a con for some of you is the price. New, this lens runs about $1,000. Whether that's a con really depends on your perspective. Ultra-wide, fast lenses are generally expensive, especially ones that are weather sealed like this one. So, is $1,000 too much for an 18mm f1.8 that's weather sealed? That's debatable, but times are tough right now, and $1 doesn't go as far as it used to. This lens did cost less a few months ago. And keep in mind, there aren't really any other 18mm f1.8 autofocus options available for the L mount. This lens is one of a kind, so if it's out of your budget, you're unfortunately out of luck. And that's certainly a con if affordability is your biggest concern. If I had to reach for another con, it's that the lens isn't image stabilized, but honestly, that's barely worth mentioning when you consider that Lumix cameras have some of the best in-body image stabilization in the business. Plus, stabilization typically matters less with ultra-wide lenses anyway. So, while it's technically not stabilized, I don't really consider that a real drawback. And that's really it for the cons. There's a lot to like about this lens. Let's talk about the pros. For an 18mm f1.8, it's surprisingly compact. Usually bright ultra-wides tend to be chunky on full-frame bodies, but not this one. It's roughly the same size and weight as the rest of Lumix's f1.8 primes, which is great news for anyone who likes to use a gimbal. It makes swapping lenses effortless. On top of that, it shares the same 67mm front filter thread as the other 1.8 lenses in the lineup, making filter compatibility easy and convenient. Staying on the subject of video, the autofocus motor is extremely quiet. I didn't notice any distracting focus breathing. For videographers, this lens checks all the boxes. Autofocus is snappy, reliable, and confident on both my S9 and S1R2. And yes, this lens supports full-time manual focus override, which is another big plus. The maximum aperture is another huge pro. At f1.8, combined with the dual native ISO capabilities of modern Lumix bodies, you'll rarely run into a lighting situation where you don't have enough exposure flexibility. In those rare cases where f1.8 isn't bright enough, you can easily bump up your ISO without worrying about image quality. Weather sealing is another major win. At this price point, you'd expect durability, and it delivers. I've used this lens on the beaches of the Dominican Republic and in the rain and in humid environments, and it held up beautifully. I also love the minimum focusing distance, just 7 inches or about 0.18 meters. That allows for some really creative close-up shots. Ultra-wide lenses usually struggle to isolate subjects, but by opening up to f1.8 and getting close, you can create pleasing separation and bokeh. Many ultra-wides produce pretty flat background blur, but this one surprised me. It looks fantastic. Image quality is exceptional. My shots are razor sharp, color rendition is beautiful, and overall, this lens has elevated both my photography and video work. I went from thinking, this is a cool lens, let's see what I can do, to wow, this thing rarely leaves my camera. When I was in New York City, I originally planned to use this lens for B-roll and talking headshots for another review episode. But after wrapping, I kept it on for some street photography, and what was supposed to be a quick test turned into hours of shooting around Manhattan. The experience completely won me over on this 18mm for street photography. If you're wondering whether the image quality is good enough to justify the price, I can confidently say that it is. For professionals, I think this lens is a fantastic investment. It's not cheap, but I use it constantly. Some of my most expensive lenses, like my $3,000 Canon L glass, seems overpriced to some, but I use those lenses professionally and they've paid for themselves several times over. If you're a working professional who needs a lens at the 18mm focal length, this is a similar situation, but it's only $1,000. If you're a working professional, you could easily pay this lens off after just a few gigs. For hobbyists, it's definitely more of a splurge, but you're still getting pro-level quality at a reasonable price for what it delivers. So, my final thoughts. If you followed this channel for a while, you know 35mm is my all-time favorite focal length for storytelling. But after using this 18mm for nearly a year, I've developed a whole new appreciation for this focal length. I initially thought it would be a niche lens that I'd only use occasionally, but it's actually become my most used prime for the L mount system. Most of my B-roll on this channel is now shot with this lens. It's my vlogging lens, and lately it's even been sneaking its way into my street photography. The quality is stellar, it delivers amazing images, and if you've got the budget, this should be at the top of your list of Lumix L mount primes to pick up. It's a workhorse lens that earns its keep, and I can't recommend it enough. That does it for today's episode. Do you own this Lumix S 18mm f1.8 lens? What do you think about it? Tell me about it in the comments below. Did you go with the 24, or did you go with a different Lumix lens, or did you maybe go with a Sigma Prime that's a little tighter than this? Tell me about that in the comments below. And if you're a fan of this channel, I humbly ask you to click the subscribe button below. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.